Hey everybody, this is Carl back again for the last Blade related content for this month. Next time we'll cover anything Blade related will be in terms of a comic book. But I already covered the first two Blade films, one Blade comic, and Marvel anime Blade. So now I'll be covering Blade Trinity, the final Blade film, until the MCU eventually covers Mahershala Ali Blade. But before we get into it, please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this with your friends, and let me know what you think of recent content so far for the Halloween theme month. And thank you all who's been like loving the content. By the way, Blade 2 has been blowing up. My review on that, and as well as other videos that I made. So please check out everything I've just been to your liking that might catch your fancy. Anyway, I made a faux pas in my Blade 2 review where I made a mention about the directors who did Blade 1 and 2, and I made some kind of comment about like, oh man, kind of as David S. Goyer came back for a third one, but he actually did. He did do that. I did not even, I probably knew, but kind of left my brain that he did Blade Trinity. And from what I remember, many years ago, after this movie came out, that the studios kind of pushed to get this movie made because it was such a cash cow. And from what I understand, Wesley Snipes was kind of annoying and being a diva behind the scenes, from what I've heard from interviews with Patton Oswalt. But Wesley Snipes reprised his role as Eric Brooks Blade. We got Jessica Biel as Abigail Whistler, the daughter of Abraham Whistler. We'll get into that in a minute. Ryan Reynolds as Hannibal King. Dominic Parcell as Dracula. Chris Christopherson, Abraham Whistler. Parker Posey as Danica Talos. Cullum Keith Renee as Asher Talos, her brother. Triple H as Jarko Grimwood. Natasha Lyonne as Summerfield. Patton Oswalt as Hedges. John Michael Higgins as Dr. Edgar Vance. The music by the RZA, didn't even know that. So, like I said, man, this movie, after so much bad movies we had over the years since Blade Trinity, I can't really put up as like the worst film ever made, but in terms of this trilogy, it's definitely like such a huge drop of the ball I ever seen. The effects is, yeah, I made a complaint about the little special effects that happened in Blade 2, and I mentioned that Guillermo del Toro was rushed in production, so he had to do what he had to do in terms of like the effects. But I think the effects here is probably almost arguably the worst. Was even more of a travesty is the fight choreography. Like I said, it's like, I don't know how many people actually enjoyed making this movie. As I mentioned as well, Wesley Snipes pretty much wasn't given his all in this. In the fight choreography, it's like, in the first two movies, you feel like, like really Wesley Snipes strutting his stuff in terms of martial arts. and there's, you know, some weight to it. Here it's like Power Rangers level of, you know, martial arts, whereas, you know, it doesn't feel like most people are getting hit. But anyway, we opened up with narration by Ryan Reynolds. You know, of course, this wouldn't be the first time Ryan Reynolds was involved in a superhero property. He playing this character Hannibal King, who you know, showed up in a, you know, older Blade comics. It wasn't until like a few years after this movie I realized, oh, Hannibal King was actually a Marvel character. But I guess it tracks because they're basing the story, because one of the earliest Blade comics was Blade, because when Blade was invented, he was originally just like a regular vampire hunter. It wasn't until a little while later, I don't know how much long, this is around the 70s, when I assume Blade was first invented. I could be wrong. You can easily look it up to, you know the actual facts. But Blade was eventually turned into like a half vampire, and that's where it kind of stuck. But one of his earliest adventures was him taking down Dracula. So making a movie where Blade fights Dracula makes sense. But I could see the point on one hand with the studio, when it's like something that's making tons of money and it's supposedly supposed to be a guaranteed success, especially if you got like two key players, you know, Wesley Snipes and Chris Christopherson. But Chris Christopherson, you know, from what I've heard, didn't want to be involved anymore. Like, you know, like many actors after him and before him, dump enough money into it. We've seen it with even with Harrison Ford with Han Solo, where he did not want to, he wanted to die in his character, he wanted his character to die in A New Hope, but they, you know, George Lucas said nix to that and carried on, and then they finally granted his wishes in Force Awakens and killed him off. Spoiler alert to that. But here, Chris Christopherson, he get kills off in here because, you know, he just didn't want to be involved. It was like hardly anybody wanted to be in it. I want to say not everybody, but it's enough people. It was like I guess it might have been a slog just to get through. It was a paycheck, but man, you can see it through. You can just tell in some cases. And I should have known this was the David S. Goyer film because the fast forward sequences are just all over the place, and that's, looking back, that's like so him. Anyway, a group of these vampire elites went to Syria to dig up, or found like the tomb of Dracula. That's one of the comics is, you know, known to be called Tomb of Dracula. And they dug him up in hopes to finally have they need like the best vampire in order to take down Blade, because nothing that they ever thrown at him in the past ever worked. He always manages to come out on top. So I guess Dracula would be like Blade's doomsday, whereas like the only one that could probably really legit throw hands at him and give him like oh crap, like Blade can actually lose against somebody on this level. This is like a whole nother league of a vampire. And this version of Dracula, he's, you know, not affected by sunlight. He's like the purest source. He's the original vampire. And eventually in this film tells you, like, you know, unlike other vampires, his blood isn't diluted by centuries of mutations. uh, which is like a key in order to we learned later to how to defeat him. So they end up digging Dracula up, who's managed to still be alive, and they end up, uh, turning the public against Blade by, on one of Blade's missions, he's trying to track down, and take out these vampires. They set him up where Blade quotes, accidentally killed a human person, thinking he was one of those vampires, but he had fake teeth and everything like that, which you can tell by subtle hints where he's like, you'll think like, oh, he's avoiding the solar UV headlights on Blade's car, while the vampire driver is turned to ash. The other guy is just hiding away, thinking like, oh, like I'm gonna avoid the sunlight. But no, I mean, like, it's a decent plan, where it's just like, something you wouldn't think twice about until you see later when he's getting staked and he asks like, why don't you ash? Because I'm not a vampire. And you see on the rooftop Blade's being filmed, and it's sent to news media outlets to frame Blade as a mass, I won't say mass murder, but just a murder in place. And then learn all these other attacks that he was behind. And you learn later that the number, he actually remembered the number of humans that Blade, Blade remembers the number of humans he killed. It was over 1,187, 82, something like that. But they was all familiars. So Blade had no, empathy for them. But here's the issue. If you remember from the first film, as Whistler told the Dr. Karen, when she says like, oh, I can go to the police, news media outlets, it's like, no, they own the police. It's like, this is like a very deep conspiratory kind of thing where these vampires infiltrated certain positions of power, or got the hooks into certain people in possession of power in order to maintain their secrecy. So why is it that they need to frame Blade at all? You can, if you own, because you see here they own the an FBI commissioner or director, and this Dr. Vance, this psychologist, in order to manipulate the media to swing things in the positions that they want. It's like, just have them just tell them, like, make Blade public enemy number one and fabricate something. Like, you don't need much of an excuse. If you tell them to do something, they'll just end up doing it. But they go through this whole rigmarole of framing him. It's like, you don't need to. Us like, have you and could they figure out where Blade's hideout at? You can just have a bunch of humans stormtroop their way into this facility and take them out if you want to. Blade, and Whistler's two-man operation, they can't take on, a huge chunk of SWAT teams. But that's what happens. And I mean, there is like a whole discussion. It's brief, but they kind of sort of, I want to say gloss over it, but it isn't like a huge focus, which you could have lead into, where Whistler points out to Blade that, like, hey, I'm sorry I got old on you. And like, it breaks my heart to know that you're gonna live a life just surrounded by enemies. uh but then you see Blade work with like the Night Stalkers, which is a stupid name, and Blade having to learn to work with an actual legit team that he will lead. And it could have played a little bit more into that, in my opinion. Blade is so used to doing solo stuff, or at the most working with his mentor, which he was more used to. But anybody else was pretty much like a liability to him. I want to say a liability, but they just in the way of, because he has his own way of doing things. And now you got to work with a couple of youngsters in a way. So it's like, kind of, done something with that. Like kind of annoying in a way. I don't know. Even back then, in 2004, I was looking at this and it's like, God, they're annoying. And it's like, who are these people? It's like, it's like they come across trying to be cool. And you see, like, of course, Ryan Reynolds is funny. I'm not going to take that away from him. It's hard to take that away from him. He is very, very funny. But it's like, yeah, Jessica Biel, and she was like, she's still like that, a very hot commodity, but she was like definitely that it girl around this time. And it's like, oh, like she playing an MP3 while listening to music that gets her in a groove while she's, taking out vampires and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't know, that's great for your workout routine, but when you're trying to deal with threats, I think you want to be a little bit more focused. I mean, sure, music could probably help you focus in some occasions, but something like this, it's like, I don't know, you're trying to appeal to a certain demographic, that's watching this. It's like, I don't know. So Blade is held in custody, and Danica and her crew come waltzing in under the guise of some kind of special agents. I don't know why they even like bother sometimes. It's like you just give Yuri own a captain, just have them just just say like, no, they're good, they're with me, kind of thing. Because it can bypass a lot of protocols just by having certain people in their pockets. So they end up walking in, and after Blake gets drugged by the doctor, he's pretty much putty in their hands until Hannibal shows up, takes out a couple of vampires. He gives Blade like this new ingestible serum thing, kind of like a mouth guard, to rejuvenate him. And him, Abigail, and Hannibal, take out a bunch of vampires and knock out some human guards. As they make their way out, hop in the car and make their escape. Come to find out that Whistler, because like you hear the story in the first Blade film, Whistler had a family. They were killed by a bunch of vampires, but Abigail was, birthed out of wedlock. And so she, met up with him at some point and was trained to fight vampires by him. And this is the subtle hint of friends that Whistler mentioned earlier that he knew of that helped him get this new serum transfer mechanism that was created. Kind of wish that he would a little bit more, while he was telling him about like worried about him being alone after eventually he will be gone, he could have mentioned like, look, I know some people that help me with certain tech that I want to introduce you to, something like that, so this wouldn't be such a shock to Blade. because he was so against the idea of like working with these kids, as he called them. Uh, uh, and there's moments that I still enjoy, like certain line deliveries from Wesley Snipes, where it's like, you know, it's like, it's like, y'all think this is a joke? This is a fucking sitcom? Like, what's this right there? Fuck you. It's a joke, right? Y'all ain't ready to roll with this. It's like, it's like, okay, it's like, granted, okay, I guess it's like that was pretty funny. I like that part. That's probably one of my favorite parts of this film. Is just like those moments. Then after learning, all this tech that they have to help like defeat them, and the looming threat of Dracula that these vampires brought to the States in order to fight Blade and really like get a hold of the world. Blade sticks around. It's like, okay, I gotta deal with this. Then they learn from Summerfield, their tech person, that they're making this kind of WMD type of mechanism they call a Daystar, where because they figure that their way of taking on vampires is going to be very obsolete, because they can take down like maybe 100 vampires per year max, but they make more of it. They constantly feed or even change certain people, probably at a larger rate per year. So we need a mechanism to take down such a large quantity in one go. So they figure like, oh, we can possibly synthesize at the blood of Dracula, or no, well, yeah, because he's like at a pure source. And so I don't even remember how they even get like no, what it is, like once combined with the blood Dracula, it does a thing where they can annihilate vampires at a large radius, which in the end of the film, it's like it only affects the vampires inside this one particular building. You'll think that's like, oh, once it gets out into the air outside of the building, it goes ever reaching and just like starts spreading and spreading and spreading. As though, I wish they kind of make that a thing, so you'll see like a widespread of vampires, whether hidden or otherwise, starting to feel the effects and start slowly dying. And you don't see that. I kind of wish they included that, because from what I'm understanding, it's only affecting this one building. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the problem is, we later found out, it's like there's no guarantee that Blade won't be affected too, because he's still half vampire. But anyway, so you see a moment where Dracula starts roaming the neighborhood and just looking around and see how things have changed, and he goes to this goth shop after he kills like the two shopkeepers. He realized, I don't know, I kind of wish there's a little bit more leaning to like, wow, this people, these how the humans look at me nowadays is like a joke. I think they touched on it, but it's like I said, they kind of wish they kind of leaned a little bit more into it. It's like Dracula's been in tune for all these years, and it's kind of like, I think it's done better in Hotel Transylvania, where at the end, when Dracula and his friends see that humans celebrate monsters, where during their heyday they were looked at as as outcasts and people to be feared, where they're not bad at all from from their perspective. And it's like, kind of wish, not the exact same moment, kind of wish Dracula's like, oh, these humans kind of celebrate me. And it's like, they look at to me as like an idol in a way. It's like these lowly humans, I can exploit this. And it's like, can you imagine like Dracula utilizing his fame to like, abuse it in a way to get more followers? Can you imagine that, like a wild story, like a Blade story, where like Dracula using his notoriety that people almost every Halloween, dress up like him and his creatures of the night, and it's like, gain followers and people probably wanting to, more people wanting to join into being his ranks, to be in his thrall, because that could have easily been a thing. But like I said, it didn't, they didn't really, utilize that to like a decent degree. So while Blade, Abigail, and Hannibal go on the streets to get information from these familiars, trying to get information to lead to the whereabouts of Dracula and anybody in that inner circle to deal with this. And they realize one of the guys have a direct line to Dr. Vance, so they find, I don't know why they didn't think about that after Blade realized that Dr. Vance is one of those familiars, and it's like, okay, we can't get to the FBI commissioner that easily, so we can get to the doctor, so you can easily look him up. You got tech people in your employ. So they end up going to Dr. Vance's office, realize he was killed by Dracula because he obviously turned out to be a loose end. Don't know how he came to that freaking conclusion, but Hannibal gets wounded and Blade chases after Dracula, and these two had like a talk. And he looks at Blade as like an honorable warrior, where he looks down not only on the humans but the vampires as well, realize like how far they've fallen, and they're just like, they all like lost themselves. They don't know about like the the like the honorable ways of a warrior, or like dying by the sword or anything like that. They because he lived in a time when that was respectable. So he hopes that when these two do fight, it'll be like the fight of the ages kind of situation. Later on, for some reason, Dracula shapeshifts into, because he's able to like just shapeshifts into people. He shapeshifts into Whistler for some reason. Don't know why he needed to do that. He can just walk on in whenever he wants to. And how he figured out their hideout, that's another thing, how they figured that out. He walks in, kills everybody except for Silverfield's daughter that they hold hostage, and Hannibal. And while Hannibal is being interrogated by the other vampires, this is another moment where like it's hilarious, between like just Ryan Reynolds just cracking jokes towards these vampires. Is freaking hilarious. There's another funny part. This is a great part I really enjoyed. When Blade and Abigail get back after they take deal with one of the vampires in like Talos's inner circle, but also the FBI captain, realizing they've been using like brain dead people off the streets, harvesting their blood for like a vampire final solution situation. Blade not only has this whole place shut down, he takes out that FBI captain. So they come back, find everybody dead, which is kind of like bogus in a way because you don't get much from these people. This is like only a couple people you recognize. Like Summerfield is the actress from the American Pie films, and Patton Oswalt obviously, and Ryan Reynolds obviously, and Jessica Biel. The others, I never seen them in any other thing before. And you don't get much time with them to feel anything. It's like, dang, you just like they're just there to die. It's like that's a complete waste. This whole movie is a complete waste, to be honest with you. But they find this video recording from Summerfield saying like, like those like made when, if or when she ever dies, they she has something like, luckily, like, hey, this is what Daystar will do, make sure you look after my daughter and blah 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 blah. So they end up tracking down because each of the Night Stalkers have this kind of like a hidden tracker. So whenever one of them is kidnapped, they know where to go. So they find this building, they rescue Hannibal. You would think like, Hannibal and Abigail will have some kind of romantic thing going on, but they more so like, I remember from the behind the scenes DVD years ago, because for a short time I was, I had a thing where I love watching those behind the scenes stuff, less so these days. But I remember when Jessica Biel commented about like, or Ryan Reynolds, I can't remember which one, they made a comment about like, oh, their relationship is more like a brother-sister kind of dynamic. And once again, I kind of like, you would think that maybe she would be interested in Blade, but there's no such thing with that. Just like in the first film where there's no hint of any kind of romantic thing between each other. The closest one was in 2 with Blade and Nyssa. So yeah, Blade is probably the more unique superhero in their movie, where the whole romantic interest is almost non-existent. It's just like straight like just I'm about the job. Not like there hasn't been cases. And currently in the comics, Blade has been in a romantic relationship with a woman, as I read in my Blade comic review, that he actually got a daughter named Brielle, who's getting into the whole vampire hunting game, which at some point I will do a review on that because it's actually pretty decent. But anyway, they take out a bunch of vampires, they save the daughter, Hannibal takes out Triple H, and Blade and Dracula fight. And like you see like the transformation, the CGI is just so horrendous, and like, oh my god, the wire work, this movie just probably should not have been made. But Abigail shoots the arrow with the Daystar formula, but Dracula catches it, tosses it to the side, thinking it's nothing. But Blade picks it up, shoves it into his body. The chemicals do their thing, and all the vampires in the building die. And then it's getting the more horrendous part of the film, where it's left so ambiguous. Don't even know why they even shot it this way, where it left it so ambiguous, where like Dracula leaves a parting gift where, you know, he'll shapeshift into Blade just to give him a chance to get away before the cops come. So, and then his you know, once his body officially, you know, just dies, you know, while he's in the morgue, uh Blade is off, you know, continuing his fight against vampires. But then there's an alternate ending where, and this is like a whole nother thing where Patton also pointed out, where it actually is Blade and he wakes up and he got CG eyes. He didn't want to open up his doggone eyes for some freaking weird reason. Like I said, he was being like a complete diva, the worst kind of diva behind the scenes of this film. He didn't even want to open up his eyes, so they CGI, because he's being so stubborn, they had to CGI his eyes open. He looked awful. And for some reason, the show Blade killing a bunch of orderlies and doctors and police people that's around the body, and left like, why would Blade even do that? He would knock him out and make his escape at most, but he would not kill anybody. So what's the point of that? It is dumb. It's a dumb, confusing ass ending on both alternate endings. It's like, that's, you know, one alternate is like, oh, that is literally Blade, and he just died from because he was affected by the Daystar thing. It's like, so it's like, just leave it as like, oh, Drake, you know, Drake's body. And why do you even have Drake's body still there on the slab? You could just eventually just turn to ash when a vampire officially dies, turned to ash and left nothing. Further confirming to police and other people, like, oh, vampires must exist because like this body turned to ash. This movie is terrible. It remains still to this day is one of the worst films, superhero films. Man. But I haven't seen it in a mighty long time, so like I figure, like, you know, why the hell not? Who knows, will I ever see this movie ever again? Never say never. Who knows? But yeah, anyway, leave a comment if you ever seen this movie recent days, months. Is it still the worst film you ever seen? Or maybe it's not as bad as you might remember. But anyway, I will see you guys in some point next week, where I have some new reviews for the Halloween month. And yeah, in like a couple weeks I'll have the Spider-Man 2 game walkthrough, getting ready. It's the final game of the year that I've been looking forward to. So I'm looking forward to that. But anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Have a great weekend. And yeah, like I said, like next week, you know, gaming streams are probably gonna be, you know, brought down to a very minimum, because I'm just trying to focus on probably taking a bit of a break before like Spider-Man game comes out. But I'll still try to get my reviews up in like a decent fashion. Well, just leave it as a surprise of what I'm gonna be doing next week, but look forward to when I'm streaming. If you follow me in the links in the description below, Twitter, Patreon, Twitch, YouTube, you'll know what I got going on. So take care, be safe.